So there is a story which says that there was once a very vain king, and he wanted to prove to everyone that I am the best. So he called his minister and he asked that, tell me, am I greater or God is greater? Now the minister knew that if he said the truth, he would have his head off. But he decided to say the truth anyway. And he said, you are greater, O king, because you can chuck anyone from your kingdom as and when you want to. But God can't chuck anyone out of his kingdom, because God is his whole kingdom. So the point is, our whole conditioning makes us feel that everything good and beautiful is God, and everything that's not so appealing to our senses is not God. But Sri Aurobindo writes, God is so powerful that he can choose to be weak when it serves his purposes. So Shiva, another word for Shiva is auspicious, good. We could say that God is so auspicious that he can choose to appear inauspicious when it suits his purposes, right? So the point is, everything is a becoming of God without exception. That would mean the fabric of my highest thought is God. The fabric of my most petty thought is also God. But I feel when I'm petty, that's not God. But then, is it that we can say anything can be chucked out of the kingdom of God? Logically, no. So everything is a movement of God. Now in Savitri, for a long time I wondered about these lines, and just last week there are these lines, the symboled Om, the great assenting word. Assenting means I say yes to you. If I assent to you, I say yes to you. So why is Om the great assenting word? Because everything is a symbol of Om. That's why it's called the symbol Om. If God is everything, Om is everything, and Om says yes to becoming everything. It says yes to becoming the worm, it says yes to becoming the God, it says yes to becoming my highest thought, my pettiest thought. Everything is Om, the symboled Om, the great assenting word, the word that says yes to everything. The bridge between the rapture and the calm. So Om is the bridge between the rapture, it could be ecstasy, it could be excitement, and the calm. Of course, this is just my take on it, but I thought Om is really the bridge between Purusha and Prakriti also, isn't it? Purusha is calm, silence. Prakriti is creation, it's rapture. So the yoga philosophy says that the same Ishwar, which is represented by Om, in one aspect becomes Purusha, the witnessing consciousness, and in one aspect becomes Prakriti, thoughts, emotions, body sensations which are witnessed. But both are Om. So Om is the bridge between the rapture and the calm. The passion and beauty of the bride. Sri Aurobindo often calls matter the bride in Savitri, and the bridegroom is the spirit. So the passion and beauty of the bride. The chamber where the glorious enemies kiss. The glorious enemies are spirit and matter, which are often at war. But Om is the chamber where the glorious enemies kiss. The smile that saves, the golden peak of things. So the smile that saves, that is the symboled Om, because when you're anchored in that Om intelligence, nothing is outside you, nothing is terrible, nothing is good. Everything is one continuum of that intelligence. So instead of judging it, all we can do is witness, watch with an indulgent smile. So I'm reading these words again. They are very, very beautiful. The symboled Om, this is page 310, Savitri, the great assenting word. The bridge between the rapture and the calm, the passion and beauty of the bride, the chamber where the glorious enemies kiss, the smile that saves, the golden peak of things. The next piece says, generation of the great mirage. Mirage is, we know, an optical illusion, something that doesn't exist but you think it exists. The million-bodied one manufactures the million bodies it inhabits, along with the myriad thoughts flowing through. The million-bodied one is the one consciousness that perceives its own manufacture of thought and body sensations, justifying Rumi's words, no eye but his has ever looked upon the universe. So I feel that there's Nita looking, there's Shobha looking, there's Amay looking, but that's the great mirage. Behind Shobha's eyes also there is that one eye that is looking. Behind Nita's eye, behind every eye, there is one eye which is really looking at itself. So Rumi's words, no eye but his, EYEI, has ever looked upon the universe. So Maya meant for them, Sri Aurobindo says, that is the Vedic rishis, the power of infinite consciousness to contain itself and measure out, that is to say, form, name and shape out of the vast, illimitable truth of infinite existence. So in simple words, Maya is this trick the infinite consciousness plays on itself to appear to itself also as finite and limited. Do you understand? It's a trick not played on anyone else, but it's a game the Lord is playing with himself. He plays a trick on himself to forget that he is everything and become this limited Nam Roop Gun. So, this Maya is the capacity of the Infinite One to perceive himself as a limited individual. Because there is perception of body sensations and thoughts, there is birth of this great mirage, the sense of an individual who perceives. So, because thoughts are there, because body sensations are there, we assume that there's an individual person who's thinking and who's feeling this body. That's the great mirage. If there are no thoughts, like in a sense deprivation chamber, when they sort of deprive your senses of any input, your whole experience of reality can change, right? But while you're having thoughts and while you're feeling the body, there's an assumption that there is a me who's having the thoughts and feeling the body. This is the great ignorance remedied by Buddha's teaching. Thinking occurs, but there is no individual who thinks. Sensing occurs, but there is no individual who senses. What a brilliant thing. Thinking occurs, but there is no thinker, no separate thinker from the whole. We are not talking about the one thinker who's thinking through every mind, but there is no individual thinker. Sensing occurs, but there is no individual who senses. Are we together so far? Huh? You didn't get that. So you feel that because you are thinking, there is a Mansi who has to be thinking. But can you wrap your mind around the fact that there is thinking happening, but you feel Mansi exists because there is thought. But if you didn't have thought, the whole perception of Mansi would fall apart, right? So thinking happens, but there is no individual who thinks. It's a play of Prakriti and Purusha, which is creating thought. And you feel that there is a person here. So that person is a mental construct. The person, the self-image, is adhyaropa. In Vedanta, we call it adhyaropa, superimposition cast on the impersonal interaction between consciousness, Purusha, and energy, Prakriti. This is the metaphorical snake superimposed on the rope. So the rope is this field of Om, which is a play of Purusha and Prakriti. But to think that I exist is the snake I'm imagining the rope to be. When the snake is seen, as Ramana Maharishi says, the rope remains unseen. When the rope, the million-bodied one, is seen, the snake, the individual I vanishes. In that seeing is the long-sought liberation. So now this is followed by a beautiful sonnet by Sri Aurobindo. It's called Leela. In us is the thousand-fold spirit who is one. Thousand-fold, it has thousand folds, but it is one. An eternal thinker, calm and great and wise. A seer whose eye is an all-regarding sun, whose eye is an all-regarding sun, no eye but no EYE but his has ever looked upon the universe. A seer whose eye is an all-regarding sun, a poet of the cosmic mysteries, a critic witness pieces everything and binds the fragments in his brilliant sheaf, A world adventurer born on destiny's wing, gambles with death and triumph, joy and grief. A king of greatness and a slave of love. What a brilliant line. This one is a king of greatness. He's the king of universes. But he's a slave of love. If a devotee calls him with love, he becomes the devotee's slave. A king of greatness and a slave of love. Host of the stars. He's the one who hosts the stars, who gives the stars a home. A guest in nature's inn. So he who owns the whole galaxies and hosts the star becomes a guest in each of us, in Prakriti's inn. Host of the stars and guest in nature's inn. A high spectator spirit throned above, a pawn of passion in the divine game. One who has made in sport the sun and seas, mirrors in our being his immense caprice. So he's made in sport his Leela as sun and seas, and he mirrors in us his immense cunning, his cleverness, tricks us into believing we are separate from him for his Leela. Now this is from a beautiful book called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. So this is Siddhartha telling his friend Govinda, the world, Govinda, is not imperfect or slowly evolving along a long path to perfection. No, it is perfect at every moment. Every sin already carries grace within it. All small children are potential old men. All sucklings have death within them. All dying people, eternal life. So he's saying this world is not evolving into perfection. Every moment is perfection itself. Why is it perfect? Because in the caterpillar there is already the butterfly. In the sinner there is already the saint. In the saint there's already the sinner. Everything is contained in everything. It is not possible for one person to see how far another is on the way. The Buddha exists in the rubber and the dice player. The rubber exists in the Brahmin. Already during deep meditation, it is possible to dispel time, to see simultaneously all past, present and future. So how does he say that the rubber exists in the Brahmin and the Buddha exists in the rubber and the dice player? How is that? Any answers? This is the Buddha's Pratitya Samutpad, codependent origination. So the Buddha says that the whole world is like, as a metaphor, a net in which there are translucent colored jewels. And the color of any jewel is a sum total of all other jewels that reflect in it. So every piece is made up of the whole. So somewhere part of the saintliness is also reflected in the sinner. The part of the sinners, everything is so interconnected that if you take a piece of paper, it doesn't exist by itself, right? It has the tree in it. The tree has sunshine, rain. It has the woodcutter in it. It has the soil, which may be thousands of years old. So this piece of paper has the whole universe in it, isn't it? It couldn't exist independent of itself. Everything creates everything. So he says the saint is in the sinner and the sinner is in the saint. During deep meditation, it is possible to dispel time, to see simultaneously all the past, present and future, then everything is good, everything is perfect, everything is Brahma. Therefore, it seems to me that everything that exists is good. Death as well as life, sin as well as holiness, wisdom as well as folly. Everything is necessary, everything needs only my agreement, my assent, the symbol dome, the great assenting word, my loving understanding, then all is well with me and nothing can harm me. So he's saying a very important thing. We are always in a way fighting life, right? How do we fight life? We perceive something and our thought judges it as good or bad. If we judge it as good, we want to think more of it. If we judge it as bad, we want to push it away. So with every thought, we are constantly making a like-dislike relationship called rag dvesh in the language of yoga. That's what makes thoughts stick to us. The Buddha used to say the difference between me and you is your consciousness is a sticky surface. Every thought that comes stick to you. My consciousness, nothing sticks. So why does nothing stick to the consciousness of the Buddha? Because he's seen through the dream of thought. His name was Gautama. His name was Siddharth. And when he attained enlightenment, he came to be called Buddha, the awakened one. The one who had awakened from the dream of thoughts forever. What is it to awaken from the dream of thoughts? It's to know at every moment that every thought is a dream I'm having in a waking state. That no thought is a statement of reality. That every thought is a sum total of my past thoughts. It's about my past, it's not about this moment. So Buddha never took any thought seriously enough to feel aversion or craving towards it. But the Buddha stopped there. He just said, thoughts are impermanent, let them go. But Sri Aurobindo goes a step further. He says, if everything is God, even your thoughts are an emanation of the same Om. So you don't have to take the content of the thoughts very seriously. But you don't have to fight thoughts and hate them either. It's not about neti neti, it's about iti iti. This is also God, this is also God. But not in the sense you play with the thought. It's like if I see an accident happening outside and it's real, I'll run to the site of the accident. But if a child is playing a game of meeting with an accident, I'll just smile and let the child play the game, right? So your thoughts are that Leela, the game the divine is playing with himself. And you win the game the best when you see through it, when you recognize that your thoughts are not real, they are not statements of reality, and yet you don't hate them. You don't say, oh, you're so irritating, you're bugging me, whatever, because whatever you resist persists. You see your thoughts also as an emanation of Om, and you just stay present to them without indulging them, without suppressing them. So, one concept of the divine is that he is only in aspects of existence that are beautiful. However, if he exists unconditionally in everything, he is in the darker aspects of existence as well. Those are his abodes too. Thus, when vanity, self-regard, fear, jealousy are seen to be his chosen abodes, judgment towards them drops, and in surrendering to their sacredness, the game is seen through. it is seen that He alone is all. Then worship arises also towards these hands that worship, and devotion flows to the devotee, and somewhere in course of the journey to the beloved, I fall in love with myself. And I know that in loving myself, even in moments of fear or anger or jealousy, I'm loving the beloved with a completion not felt before. Do you get that? Normally, moment thoughts of fear or anger or jealousy arise, firstly, I don't like those thoughts, so I start resisting them. Then I start resisting myself for thinking those thoughts. I'm bad, so I'm thinking those thoughts. So instead, it's to just recognize that I don't exist, I am the mirage. The thoughts are an interaction of Purusha and Prakriti. They too are made up of Om. And I just let that thought pass. I don't call it good or bad. I don't let it stick to me. I don't identify with it. I just soften behind it and let it pass. Because this too is His abode. Why do I think God is only my most inspiring, beautiful, generous thought? If God is everything, isn't He also my thought of fear, my thought of anger, my thought of jealousy? And if He has come to me as that thought, why has He come to me as that thought? That's the question, right? Why does a child play a game? So God is an eternal child playing an eternal game in an eternal garden, Sri Aurobindo says. So He's playing this game with me through my own thoughts. And He's playing the game so that I win. In Savitri there's a line, right? A play and yet no play, but a deep scheme of a transcendent wisdom, finding ways to meet her Lord in the shadow and the night. So it's challenging the wisdom in me to find my God even in the shadow and night. And the shadow and night is not necessarily outside me. The shadow and night is in me also as the darker parts of Prakriti that come up. And the Leela is about finding God even in the shadow and night. A play and yet no play, but a deep scheme of a transcendent wisdom, finding ways to meet her Lord in the shadow and the night. Clear? So every time any thought comes, a beautiful spiritual practice is to not cling to any thought. Getting attached to a pleasant thought and wanting to think of it is one way of clinging. But being averse to a negative thought is clinging to it in an opposite way. So I am the witness consciousness, I am the Purusha. The thoughts are a play of myself with me. I don't have to hate them, but I have to develop a relationship of light with them. Right now, I have a relationship of avidya, ignorance with my thoughts. I have to change my relationship with thoughts. That's the key to my freedom. So, the phantom me is the great mirage, the mirage that I think I am because there are thoughts, can be ugly at times or beautiful, but with a lesser beauty. So in my own eyes, the mirage that I am can be beautiful if things go well, can be ugly at other times. The real is all beautiful for eternity, and so plays unafraid the role of phantom ugliness. You understand? The phantom me can be ugly at times or beautiful, but even its most beautiful has a lesser beauty. The real me that I am behind that mirage is all beautiful for eternity, and so it plays unafraid the role of phantom ugliness. Now words of Eckhart Tolle: even within the seemingly most unacceptable, painful situation is concealed a deeper good, and within every disaster is contained the seed of grace. This is something beautiful to remember. Even within the seemingly most unacceptable, painful situation is concealed a deeper good, and within every disaster is concealed the seed of grace, is contained the seed of grace. Throughout history, there have been men and women and men who, in the face of great loss, illness, imprisonment, or impending death, accepted the seemingly unacceptable, and thus found the peace that passeth all understanding. He's saying a very important thing. Throughout history, if you look at Stephen Hawking, if you look at all the great people who had such debilitating circumstances, but somehow they had the grace to accept what was unacceptable to their mind. And that accepting the unacceptable is greatness, is what made them great. Yeah? And what helps you to accept the unacceptable? Why is it unacceptable, first of all? Because your mind says this is wrong. Your mind has judged it as unacceptable, right? You're comparing to others, whatever. Your mind has its own narrative due to which it says this is not on. So many times I hear people saying, she can't do this, how can she do this? Arey, but what's the point of saying she can't? She has done it. So this is just conditioned way of talking. It's a senseless way of saying you can't do this, he can't do that. They have done it. Now the point is that if they have done it, and I go by these words, that within every disaster there's a seed of grace. Now my mind can't see that seed of grace because it's limited. But my Gurudev has said, all the great thinkers have said, and if I'm quiet and I go into my heart, I'll know it in my heart. Sri Aurobindo's famous line, no, there's a meaning in every curve and line. And the supreme diplomat makes our fall a means for grace. I mean, Savitri is full of this thought. So, can I believe that more than my mind, which is saying this is unacceptable, to believing that if it has happened, it's for a purpose. There is a seed of grace even in this disaster. There has to be. And can I accept it in the poise of this leap of faith, what I cannot accept in my reason? Right? And actually I need grace to do that. I need to be quiet and I need to invite grace to make this happen. I cannot do it with my mind. I can't reason with it. It's beyond logic. But if every moment I'm poised in the knowing that this moment is perfect as it is, whatever happens has an inherent perfection to it which my logic can't grasp, but the perfection is there. And I say an inner yes to the unfolding of this moment, that to my mind is the greatest surrender to God. And if I keep saying no to the moment, in one sense that's being an atheist. Because believing in God as a form is good, but the real God is unfolding in the moment, no? Neil Donald Walsh says God is now here or nowhere. If you join now here, it becomes nowhere. So looking at it from the mind's point of view, it's nowhere. Or now here, everything that's happening in my life is a gift of God. So can I say yes to it? Can I say an unconditional yes to every arising, not only of situations outside, but to my thoughts about it, but without believing the content of the thought. If my thought is arising, this is not on, he can't do this to me, I start resisting the thought. So I'm resisting the situation, then I'm resisting my thought. That's two levels of resistance, right? So if a thought of resistance arises, I just soften behind that and say yes to it. Yes, it has arisen. I'm not buying into its content, but I don't resist the fact that it's arisen. And I don't call myself a bad person. Oh, where's my surrender? I don't go into all that. The thought has arisen, that's it. I say yes to it and I let it flow. I don't let it stick, right? Acceptance of the unacceptable. And actually there's nothing that's unacceptable per se. It's just unacceptable to your mind in the moment because of your past conditioning. Is the greatest source of grace in this world. Now Sri Aurobindo's words from Thoughts and Glimpses. Transform reason into ordered intuition. Let all thyself be light. This is thy goal. So the leap of faith that we were talking about is an intuition. You already know it in your heart. So transform reason that judges and say this is acceptable, that is not acceptable. Transform reason into ordered intuition. Let all thyself be light. This is thy goal. Transform effort into an easy and sovereign overflowing of soul strength. Let all thyself be conscious force. This is thy goal. So beautiful. We are all the time making effort, but transform effort into easy and sovereign overflowing of soul strength. So let the light that you are carry you, and you just become the one that's carried. Let all thyself be conscious force. This is thy goal. Transform the divided individual into the world personality. Let all thyself be divine. This is thy goal. Transform the animal into the driver of the herds. So beautiful. Let all thyself be Krishna. Here we are an animal, right? So transform the animal into the driver of the herds. Let all thyself be Krishna. This is thy goal. Okay, now this passage is called the mode of transport through eternity. We take various modes of transport, right? Train, bus, walking. So here the authors talked about the one mode of transport through all eternity. An unseen hand moves all creation, allowing each becoming the illusion of moving itself. The unseen ship of grace carries this eye through the sea of existence. This eye's limited vision sees the carrier ship as an ocean it needs to battle in order to reach the shore. So actually there is this unseen hand, which is the ship which is carrying us through the ocean. But my limited vision sees the ocean itself as a ship. She sees the ship itself as an ocean which it needs to combat and fight and push itself ahead. The limbs ache with fatigue from the effort. It is similar to the effort of the Vrijvasis to uplift Mount Govardhan to keep themselves sheltered from the rain, while Sri Krishna's little finger held the mountain anyway. You know that story, right? In brief, when it was pouring cats and dogs and all the Vrijvasis turned to Krishna, Krishna lifted up the Govardhan hill with his little finger. But the beauty of the story is he asked all the Vrijvasis, come, help me lift the mountain. So actually he was lifting the mountain, but all the Vrijvasis were given a chance to collaborate with the divine in the work and strengthen their muscles in doing so. So it's like that finger is carrying all the mountains for us anyway. But for the Leela, we have to make a personal effort to carry the mountain. But if effort would be so different if we know that an all-powerful hand is already holding the mountain. But just for my growth, I'm invited to make my personal effort to contribute. So this piece says that It is similar to the effort of the Vrijvasis to uplift Mount Govardhan to keep themselves sheltered from the rain, while Sri Krishna's little finger held the mountain anyway. The effort is summoned and orchestrated by the veiled prompter, by that one God intelligence which prompts, and the fatigue too is part of the great plan leading to the eternal repose. The repose that comes when the unseen hand begins to be seen. Which is the unseen hand? Whose unseen hand? The divine hand which is carrying us everywhere, the mode of transport through all eternity. The heart mind releases effort, releases doing, and simply falls into that hand, into the quenching peace of being moved without self-effort. How many of us like sitting on a swing? Have you ever thought why it's so pleasant to sit on a swing? Any reason? Yeah? It's moving, but at one point you're just sitting still and the swing is moving you, right? Sometimes you're pushing the floor with your feet, but once you have momentum, you're just sitting on the swing and the swing is moving you. And if you twin into that moment, it's a beautiful feeling of being moved without any effort. It gives you an intuitive field of actually what's happening in life also. You're making efforts, but that effort is actually taking you very little ahead. There is this unseen swing which is giving you the momentum you need and you're moving. Observe that next time you sit on a swing. It can be very meditative if you just let go and let the swing move you. The repose that comes when the unseen hand begins to be seen. The heart mind releases effort, releases doing, and simply falls into that hand, into the quenching peace of being moved without self-effort. The being comes home to the knowing that this alone has been its mode of transport through all eternity. Not self-effort, not all that it has done, but this has been its mode of transport through all eternity. Now Toll's words. All the misery on the planet arises due to a personalized sense of me or us that covers up the essence of who you are. When you are unaware of that inner essence, in the end you always create misery. It's as simple as that. Sri Aurobindo says it in Savitri, wherever there is ignorance, there suffering too must come. And the primary avidya, ignorance, is thinking that I exist here in my skin separate from the rest. That the thoughts I have about me are really me. That's the fundamental ignorance. So Toll is saying that all misery arises to a personalized sense of me or us that covers up the essence of who you are. When you are unaware of that inner essence, in the end you will always create misery. It's as simple as that. When you don't know who you are, you create a mind-made self as a substitute for your beautiful divine being and cling to that fearful and needy self, protecting and enhancing that false sense of self then becomes your primary motivating force. So it's so beautiful. You remember the story of the Hari, the lion, who thought he was a sheep, but he wasn't the sheep, and he was so miserable leading a sheep existence. He could only come into his own and become himself when he learned to roar, right? So long as we are living as this sense of I, this ego sense, we are always going to be miserable. So Satprem writes in one of his works that man is the most miserable of all creatures because he is the only one who is not himself. Because we have the gift and curse of thoughts. Thoughts creates the great mirage that there is a me who is thinking these thoughts. Animals don't have that. So they are what they are not miserable. But man is the only one who is a lion who is thinking he is a sheep. And that's the root cause of all our misery. So, you find peace not by rearranging the circumstances of your life, but by realizing who you are at the deepest level. So beautiful. You can keep trying to rearrange circumstances of your life, but you'll never find peace. You find peace by realizing who you are at the deepest level. Many expressions that are in common usage and sometimes the structure of language itself reveal the fact that people don't know who they are. You say, he lost his life or my life, as if life was something you can possess or lose. The truth is, you don't have a life, you are life. The one life, the one consciousness that pervades the entire universe and takes temporary form to experience itself as a stone or a blade of grass, as an animal, a person, a star, or a galaxy. Can you sense deep within that you already know that? Can you sense that you already are that? Can you? That you don't have a life, you are life. Our problem is we think we are the dancer of life, but that divine intelligence is the dancer and each of us is a step in the dance. Are you getting what I'm saying? When you perceive without interpretation, you can then sense what it is that is perceiving. The most we can say in any language is that there is a field of alert stillness in which perception happens. When you perceive without interpretation, that's the, Vedanta has many meanings, but one meaning could be Vedanta. Ved is knowledge, Vidya. Anta is coming to the end of it. So the truth of Vedanta begins when I come to the end of knowing with my mind. When I actually know that anything my mind pretends to know, it doesn't know. Like I'll call that a leaf, and the moment I've labeled it a leaf, I think I know what it is. But do I really know what it is? Leaf is just a word I was taught in school. But do I really know the magic that's unfolding in the green thing over there? Now, green is also a label. But we fool ourselves that the moment we label something, we know it. But those labels actually stop us from knowing anything. So a beautiful practice in Vedanta is to not accept my judgment about anything. So I perceive something and I just pay alert attention to it without judging it as good or bad. It's not an easy practice because there's too much conditioning, but if I can do that, then life begins to speak to me. Otherwise, life is speaking to me, but I'm not listening because I'm only listening to that voice in my head, and the voice of life is completely muffled. So, can I just pay attention to something and judgment about it will come, but I don't take that judgment seriously. I don't believe it. I let it pass through. So that's when I'll begin to really know the magic of life, when I stop believing my thoughts about it. So when you perceive without interpretation, you can then sense that it is that is, then you can then sense what it is that is perceiving. The most you can say in language that there is a field of alert stillness in which perception happens. So when you don't judge, when you just pay bare attention, you are not identified with the judging thought. Your identity shifts to the field of attention in which thought arises. And that is liberation. So long as you're identified with the voice in your head, you're in avidya. But the moment you disidentify with that voice and become aware of the observing field behind, that is freedom. Do you really need to mentally label every sense, perception and experience? Do you really need to have a reactive like-dislike relationship with life, where you are in almost continuous conflict with situations and people? Or is that just a deep-seated mental habit that can be broken? Not by doing anything, but by allowing this moment to be as it is. So we are in a continuous like-dislike relationship with life, right? But do you need to be, if every moment is Om, if every moment is the symboled Om, the great assenting word, as Sri Aurobindo says, then in fighting the moment, I'm actually fighting the God intelligence, right? I can't win. See, the whole universe conspires to bring the moment to me. When I'm fighting the moment, I'm fighting the whole universe. I can't win. I can only become miserable. So, the habitual and reactive no strengthens the ego. The ego's fuel is resistance. The more you resist life, the more you're strengthening the I, the ego which is resisting. Yes, weakens it. Your form identity, the ego, cannot survive surrender. The moment you surrender, the ego dissolves. And not surrender to an image of God, that's one level of surrender, but it's the beginning surrender. The real surrender is to surrender to God in real time, the God in the now, the God in this moment. When you say yes to the isness of life, when you accept this moment as it is, you can feel a sense of spaciousness within you that is deeply peaceful. On the surface, you may still be happy when it's sunny and not so happy when it's rainy. You may be happy at winning $1 million and unhappy at losing all your possessions. Neither happiness nor unhappiness, however, go all that deep anymore. They are ripples on the surface of your being. The background peace within you remains undisturbed, regardless of the nature of the outside condition. The yes to what is reveals a dimension of depth within you that is dependent neither on external conditions nor on internal conditions of constantly fluctuating thoughts and emotions. Surrender becomes so much easier when you realize the fleeting nature of all experiences, and the world cannot give you anything of lasting value. By the time you decide you like something, it has already changed. That's the nature of the world, it's constantly changing. By the time you wish something away, it has already changed. That's the anicca of the Buddha. So, surrender becomes so much easier when you realize the fleeting nature of all experiences and that the world cannot give you anything of lasting value. You then continue to meet people, to be involved in experience and activities, but without the wants and fears of the egoic self. That is to say, you no longer demand that a situation, person, place or event should satisfy you or make you happy. This is so important. Its passing and imperfect nature is allowed to be. You know, human beings are imperfect, at least in manifestation. There's an inherent perfection in it, but at least to my seeing, it's imperfect and it's going to be imperfect. So why am I putting an impossible demand on that person to be perfect according to my mold of perfection? I let that person be. See, I'm sourcing my happiness from this background piece, this witnessing field. And whatever's happening in my perception, I'm letting it be. I'm not wanting to change it. I'm not wanting it to do something to fulfill me or to make me happy. That is to say, you no longer demand that a situation, person, place or event should satisfy you or make you happy. Its passing and imperfect nature is allowed to be. And the miracle is that when you are no longer placing an impossible demand on it, every situation, person, place or event becomes not only satisfying but also more harmonious, more peaceful. Do you notice that when you keep prodding a person to give you what you expect of that person, the person becomes even more disharmonious? It's like the more you chase something in a person, the more that runs away from you. But if you just let the person be, I don't want you to do anything to make me happy. You be what you are, what your nature allows you to be in the moment. I'm suspending my judgment about it. I'm making the leap of faith to accept this is how the moment is secreting you. I'm not judging you as good or bad. You are an unfolding of the great assenting word, the symbol Om. Happily be what you are. I'm just going to be and observe. It's difficult to do, but it's a very, very rewarding practice. When you completely accept this moment, when you no longer argue with what is, the compulsion to think lessens and is replaced by an alert stillness. This is the gift you get of surrendering to the moment. When you completely accept this moment, when you no longer argue with what is, the compulsion to think lessens and is replaced by an alert stillness. You are fully conscious, yet the mind is not labeling this moment in any way. This inner state of non-resistance, interesting, no? The word for non-resistance is satyagraha. Satya is truth, griha is holding. So when you are in a state of non-resistance, you hold the truth and the truth holds you. Holding the truth is the real satyagraha, non-resistance. This inner state of non-resistance opens you to the unconditioned consciousness that is infinitely greater than the human mind. This vast intelligence can then express itself through you and assist you both from within and from without. That is why, by letting go of inner resistance, you often find circumstances change for the better. Beautifully said. When you don't resist something, you're allowing that inner field of God resistance to take over. And in that field, the solutions happen, the universe fixes itself. So a little practice which can be very, very helpful to accept this. Let's all do it. Sit up straight. And put your palms, make an O with your palms and put the palms around the navel and relax the elbows. So every part of your palm is touching some part of your belly. So you can observe that as you're breathing in, the belly is expanding outwards towards the palms. As you're breathing out, the belly is moving away from the palms. You can notice that the belly, as it expands, becomes slightly harder. As you breathe out and it relaxes, it softens. So you're aware of the breath and you're aware of the radio of thoughts in your head, both. Now invite Mother's hands to pick up the radio of thoughts from your skull and take it outside, somewhere in a far corner in this room. So the radio of thoughts is playing outside. You are ignoring it and you're simply focusing on the breath. In the beginning, you'll feel nothing is really happening because the thoughts are still there. Just make this little effort to ignore the radio of thoughts and keep focusing on your breath. The sensation of breath between the belly and the palms. Now when you observe the breath, sometimes thoughts will come. You don't try to push out the thoughts. You just say yes to the arising of the thoughts. You don't resist the thought, because whatever you resist will persist. And you just step outside and watch the thought like it's part of a radio outside you. You don't fight the songs of the radio. You let the radio play, you ignore it, and you go about what you're doing, which right now is simply watching the breath. I am not the thought. I am the observing field in which thought arises. Two or three more breaths. And slowly open your eyes. So this is a wonderful practice to do just 5 minutes at the beginning of the day before you sleep. Most importantly, throughout the day, whenever you're disturbed, just put the timer on your phone for 2 minutes. Put your hands on the belly, feel your breath, feel the radio of the thought remote and just start watching your breath and see if you can feel a distance between yourself and your thought. If you want your life to work, there's one relationship which needs to be functional, the relationship with your thoughts. Right now, we have a very dysfunctional relationship with our thoughts, where our thoughts have complete power over us to take us on roller coasters. So that's one relationship which we have to be able to set right. We have to see what thought is and what is our real poise vis-a-vis the thought. Yeah? So how many of you could feel your thoughts were distant when you did? You did, am I? You did? And wasn't that a very freeing feeling? Yeah? And actually this is what brings us very close to God, because that feel that we are behind thoughts, you call it Mother, Krishna, Shiva, whatever you call it, but that is the field that you are, and that's the field of God which is closest to what we are. Toll says there's nothing in the world so much like God as silence, isn't it? When you're silent, you're closest to God. Okay, let's conclude with 3 ohms.